Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and we're going to talk about the absolutely massive click of Dungeons & Dragons to Lego, the emergence of D&D Lego, and how I think we all saw this story and we're like, oh, Dungeons & Dragons and Legos are combining. And I think everybody was like, oh, that's interesting. And I think like a week out, we're like, oh my gosh, D&D and Lego are combining this. The implications of this are massive. So what I want to talk about today is specifically, I want to talk about three Lego themes: city, castle, space, their importance. But I really appreciate your patience. I'm really just unpacking the magnitude of what's happened, because I'm very convinced the vast majority of the world has no idea what's happening here or the magnitude of it. And the reason why is everybody's like, hey, Scott, you talk about Dungeons and Dragons and you're wrong. I'll see you tomorrow, and 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 I'll never leave your channel, and I'll always comment, and I'll never go away, and I'll never stop telling you wrong, but I will never 1 second ever stop listening to you or commenting on the content, right? It's like, and the reason why is I'm talking about stuff years before it hits, right? 3 years ago, I was telling you Dungeons & Dragons is a game. You can go to Twitter right now, and there are people telling you Dungeons & Dragons isn't a game, it's therapy. They're wrong, but they'll catch up, right? And the reality is Dungeons & Dragons connecting with Lego is absolutely massive. The ramifications are going to be unpacked for a long time. And that's my entire point, is Dungeons & Dragons is an enigma. It's a gift that continues from Gary Gygax that continues to be unwrapped to this day. And the ramifications of it are absolutely at a complexity level we have never seen in the humanity, in the history of humanity, right? And the reality is we keep thinking there's complexity on tech, right? But the reality is there's complexity on narrative that is simply not understood, and we're doing the work of unpacking it, right? And the reality is the clicking of Legos to Dungeons & Dragons, it's hugely important. I cannot tell you how important this is going to be for the future of Dungeons & Dragons. And I have a new statement now. D&D Lego is the biggest change to happen in Lego in the 2020s. Is the second biggest change to happen in D&D to D&D in the 2020s. What was the first? The largest change, the largest, most important change in the 2020s to Dungeons & Dragons was the Strixhaven book written by Amanda Heyman, and the opening of increased complexity on social interaction. That is a pillar. That was only equaled when Gary Gygax actually created Dungeons & Dragons and established the D&D combat pillar. Okay. And we now know, I think, from looking at Dungeons & Dragons, that we're going to pass through combat as a pillar. Well, actually, we've fully arrived on combat. We're going to pass through social interaction, and then the exploration pillar is going to start. The exploration pillar hasn't even started yet. So, but here's the biggest thing with Legos. The biggest thing is intellectual property expansion. Dungeons & Dragons is doing intellectual property expansion when the phrase isn't even moderately understood by the vast majority of companies that are doing it. I'm convinced that the creatives are moving forward out of excitement and building momentum that is completely misunderstood, not even remotely understood by the suits in these companies. They have no idea what they're actually doing. They're simply moving forward. And I get this, right? Because business has its own momentum, and then what happens is you put capitalism in that rocket, in that engine, and it serves as rocket fuel, right? And I apologize, we're not even going to get to city, castle, space, right? What we're talking about is just, here's all I'm saying in this video. What I'm saying in this video is D&D Lego is the biggest change happening in Lego in this decade, literally in this decade. The first is Amanda Heyman's work on Strixhaven. It's peerless. It hasn't been matched since 1974, right? And then, and Amanda Heyman truly is a greater creator within Dungeons & Dragons today. But this D&D Lego thing is absolutely massive. The implications of it are incredible. And what's interesting is I know I'm hitting in the right place when I get savage insults in the comments constantly. That's okay. I'll be here tomorrow, and so will you, right? And so here's the thing. People are like, "Oh, Scott, you just want to play with action figures and write fan fiction." You can go kick rocks. You know why? Because these people are such outrageously ignorant fools. They throw around insults they don't even understand. Oh, am I writing fan fiction? Do you know what 50 Shades of Grey was? It was a multi-billion-dollar property. Fan fiction, when you say fan fiction, you say, I'm an ignorant fool who doesn't understand capitalism or how money works or how narrative works or intellectual property, right? People are bandying about insults they don't even understand what's happening, right? They're like, just you're aware, 50 Shades of Grey is a multi-billion dollar franchise that launched the career of Dakota Jones, I think it's Dakota Fanning, and years later, this was Bella and Edward fanfic that turned into a multi-billion-dollar property, and that's just the first, and that's the point that you don't understand, right? Is fan fiction is not fan fiction. It's something that is not even remotely understood, right? And I've sat there in PhilCon and listened to hours of talk about fan fiction, talking about how it's changing capital, how it's changing capitalism, how it's changing narrative, how it is changing the world and how we look at stories and how we interact with stories, right? And so you're saying, oh, Scott, I think one of your ideas might turn into a multi-billion-dollar IP. Okay. Oh, thanks for the insult. Like, all you're doing is just like, so whenever you hear the word fan fiction, just realize people say things. They're like, I'm a fool, right? Semantics, fan fiction. All it's saying is my language identifies me as a repugnant, ignorant, lazy fool. That's all you're hearing, right? And that's the issue, is people are not understanding what these combinations are doing. These are catalysts, and they will make things go boom. This is how the next level of narrative is reached. And there are people who are throwing shade on it who don't have the language to even have these discussions. That's my humble opinion. I'd love to hear yours. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.